I know rock has its own kind of unique energy.
Well, it's not for me. Because it's a scam or work.
Yeah, or whatever.
Or
Just like,
I mean, it's easy for you to say when you're good.
Sorry, I just don't want you to get in trouble.
can you focus up? This is very serious.
Pina colada?
Feminine. I don't like the taste of the alcohol. My taxes, I did.
You-
Trying to say that I should have dropped your guys, Sarah.
Field trip to the bar.
All right.
Do that.
Fuck that.
Let's go.
Sarah will sing the bar with
My
you
car's
guys.
headed to Greedos.
We could drop her off in the way.
I can take you.
Have it. Great, just call you guys.
Not funny thing, know what it's like to me.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's just a job.
Bring love, and I want to feel love. I want to bring the story to life. You know, you're the only person that I get to really...
You'll see.
Ew, no, that...
Hey, as your friends, you only get one wish.
Most alien invasion stories begin when something appears in the sky. A ship, a signal, a weapon. But three-body problem begins with something far more unsettling: the possibility that humanity's understanding of reality has been deliberately broken. Across the full released story so far, the series isn't simply asking whether extraterrestrial life exists. It's asking what human beings would do if an alien civilization announced its arrival centuries in advance. Would we unite? Would we prepare? Would we surrender? Or would some people decide that humanity deserves to be replaced? The answer begins long before the mysterious countdowns, impossible virtual worlds, and flickering stars of the present day. It begins in Beijing in 1966, during the Chinese Cultural Revolution, when a young astrophysicist named Ye Wenjie watches a crowd destroy everything she once believed knowledge was supposed to protect. Her father, Ye Wenjie, is a respected physics professor, but intellectual achievement offers him no safety. He's dragged before a revolutionary rally and publicly accused of teaching dangerous Western theories. His wife is pressured into denouncing him. His students turn against him, and when he refuses to claim that accepted scientific principles are political lies, he's beaten to death in front of his daughter. For Ye Wenjie, this isn't just the murder of someone she loves. It's the destruction of the idea that truth has any power of its own. Scientific truth didn't save her father. Education didn't make the crowd reasonable. Civilization didn't prevent people from becoming cruel. In a matter of minutes, the world teaches Yi that intelligence and morality are not the same thing. That lesson will eventually place the entire human race in danger. After her father's death, Yi is sent to perform hard labor in the forests of Inner Mongolia. The surrounding wilderness is being cut down, and the destruction feels like a larger version of what happened to her family. Political movements don't merely punish individuals. They consume history, nature, and anything that cannot defend itself. There, Yi meets a journalist named Bai Mulan, who appears sympathetic to her ideas. He gives her a copy of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, a book about the environmental damage caused by pesticides. Yi reads it secretly, finding in its pages evidence that humanity's destructive behavior isn't limited to one government or one ideology. But Bai Mulan's courage disappears when the authorities discover the book. To protect himself, he allows Yi to take the blame for writing a politically dangerous letter. Once again, someone she trusted chooses survival over loyalty. Yi is arrested, interrogated, and offered a way out only if she signs a false statement implicating her dead father and other scholars. She refuses. Even after everything she has suffered, she won't help rewrite the truth. That decision attracts the attention of two military officers. Because of Yi's expertise in astrophysics, they take her to Red Coast Base, a secret installation hidden deep in the mountains. Officially, Red Coast is a military research facility. Its enormous radio telescope is supposedly part of a weapons program. But Yi gradually discovers its real purpose. The Chinese government is trying to transmit messages beyond Earth and make contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. For almost anyone else, this discovery would inspire wonder. For Yi, it presents something more dangerous, an alternative. Somewhere beyond Earth, there may be a civilization untouched by humanity's failures. Years pass. Yi becomes essential to the operation, although the officials around her never completely trust her. Then she notices something the others have missed. By directing a transmission toward the sun, they may be able to use the sun as a kind of signal amplifier, dramatically increasing the message's range. The experiment works, and one day, Red Coast receives a response. The message doesn't sound like the greeting of a peaceful civilization. It's a warning from an individual listener on another world. The sender tells Yi not to reply. If she answers, their civilization will be able to locate Earth. They will come. They will conquer humanity. Yi has been given the most important choice any human being has ever faced. She can remain silent and protect the species that murdered her father, betrayed her, imprisoned her, and continues destroying its own world. Or she can answer. Ye looks at humanity not as it might someday become, but as she has experienced it. She no longer believes people can save themselves. So she transmits a second message, inviting the alien civilization to Earth. She doesn't do this because she misunderstands the warning. She does it because she understands it perfectly. Decades later, the consequences of that decision begin surfacing in Britain. The world of 2024 appears ordinary, but scientists working at the highest levels of physics are encountering impossible results. Particle accelerators return data that makes no sense. Experiments once considered reliable seem to suggest that the fundamental laws of nature are no longer stable. Some researchers abandon their work. Others lose their grip on reality. Several die under mysterious circumstances. Clarence Shih, usually called Da Shi, is one of the investigators examining the pattern. He doesn't resemble the polished intelligence officers around him. He smokes where he shouldn't, asks blunt questions, and often appears less sophisticated than the people he's interviewing. But Da Shi understands something the scientists initially don't. Individually, every death might look like a personal tragedy. Together, they look like an attack. One of the dead scientists is Vera Ye, the daughter of the now elderly Ye Wenjie. Vera taught physics at Oxford and had become a mentor to a close group of former students. Those students are Jin Cheng, Saul Durand, Auggie Salazar, Will Downing, and Jack Rooney. The friends sometimes described as the Oxford Five. They studied together, but their lives have moved in very different directions. Jin remains deeply involved in theoretical physics. She's brilliant, curious, and almost incapable of turning away from a mystery once she senses there's an answer hidden inside it. Her boyfriend, Raj Varma, is a naval officer, a practical man whose career will soon place him much closer to the coming crisis than either of them expects. Saul is equally gifted, but he hides much of his intelligence behind sarcasm, detachment, and apparent lack of ambition. He works as a research assistant and behaves as though nothing matters enough to demand his full commitment. Yet the series quietly signals that other people see more potential in Saul than he sees in himself. Will has stepped away from the competitive world of advanced research and now teaches physics. He's gentle, introspective, and painfully aware that he hasn't fulfilled the promise others once saw in him. He has also carried an unspoken love for Jin for years, even though she has built a life with someone else. Jack left science behind and turned his intelligence into money. He created a snack food empire, becoming wealthy enough to surround himself with expensive toys and pop culture collectibles. He jokes about almost everything, but his humor masks the disappointment of someone who once hoped scientific genius would give his life meaning. Then there is Auggie Salazar. Auggie is developing advanced nanofiber technology capable of producing material extraordinarily thin and strong. Her work could transform manufacturing, medicine, and countless other industries. It also makes her one of the most valuable applied scientists in the world. And that's why whatever is targeting scientists chooses her. Auggie begins seeing a luminous sequence of numbers floating in her vision. It appears wherever she looks, counting steadily downward. Medical examinations find nothing wrong with her eyes or brain. The countdown cannot be photographed. No one else can see it. Yet it never stops. The experience is terrifying because it seems designed specifically for her. It doesn't behave like a hallucination. It behaves like a message. A mysterious woman named Tatiana approaches Auggie and tells her that the countdown will disappear if she shuts down her nanofiber research. Tatiana doesn't explain who she represents or how the numbers are being placed inside Auggie's vision. She simply tells her what to do and suggests that, at midnight, she should look at the sky. Auggie stops the project. The countdown vanishes. That alone should be impossible. But what happens next is witnessed not only by Auggie, but by observers across the world. At the appointed time, the stars begin blinking. The entire night sky appears to flicker in a deliberate pattern. It isn't random. The flashes correspond to a coded sequence, continuing the countdown Auggie had been seeing. For humanity, the event is an astronomical impossibility. For Auggie, it's a threat. Something has demonstrated control not merely over a laboratory or a computer screen, but over human perception on a global scale. And it has used that power to intimidate one scientist into abandoning her work. This is the first major shift in the mystery. The laws of physics may not actually be collapsing. Someone wants humanity's scientists to believe they are. At the same time, Jin discovers an object among Vera's possessions that appears to be even more technologically impossible. A smooth, reflective virtual reality headset with no visible controls and no recognizable manufacturer. When Jin puts it on, she doesn't see a crude computer simulation. She feels herself transported into another world. She can sense the air against her skin. She can feel the ground beneath her feet. The environment is indistinguishable from reality. There are no menus, controllers, or obvious game mechanics. Instead, she encounters a strange civilization struggling to survive unpredictable cycles of extreme heat and cold. During stable eras, the people build cities and attempt to understand their world. During chaotic eras, the sun may disappear for years or suddenly rise with devastating intensity. To survive, the population dehydrates their bodies, becoming dry, folded husks that can be stored until conditions improve. When a new stable era begins, they are immersed in water and restored. Every civilization tries to predict the movement of the sun. Every civilization eventually fails. The game presents itself as a scientific puzzle, but it is also testing Jin. It wants to know whether she can look beyond the spectacle and understand the suffering of the people inside it. And Jin isn't the only person being invited. A separate headset appears in Jack Rooney's home. Whoever is distributing this technology already knows who the Oxford scientists are, where they live, and which of them can be manipulated through curiosity. By this point, the pattern is becoming clearer. Scientists are being frightened away from research. The most intelligent minds are being drawn into a virtual world. Surveillance footage fails to capture Tatiana even when witnesses know she was present. And an event linked to China's distant past is reaching into the lives of people who don't yet understand that humanity has already made contact. The question is no longer whether someone is interfering with science. The question is why they're doing it. Because the enemy isn't preparing to destroy the Earth immediately. It's preparing the Earth to be helpless when the real invasion finally arrives. The virtual world doesn't give Jin time to celebrate her first success. Civilization 137 has been frozen out of existence, and the child called Follower has shattered before her eyes. Yet when Jin returns for the next level, Follower is alive again. She remembers dying. That detail changes the emotional logic of the game. Follower isn't merely a decorative guide placed there to make the simulation feel more human. She represents every generation born beneath the three suns, every child who grows up knowing that the sky may kill her without warning. Jack joins Jin for the second level, choosing the name Francis Bacon while Jin continues as Copernicus. They arrive in 15th century Europe and present themselves before Pope Gregory XIII. Two other supposed players, Aristotle and Galileo, already believe they've solved the movements of the sun. But Jin has recognized something far more important. The world isn't orbiting a single star. It exists inside a solar system containing three suns. When the planet is temporarily captured in a predictable orbit around one of them, civilization experiences a stable era. Agriculture returns. Cities grow. Knowledge accumulates. Then the gravitational pull of the other suns disrupts that orbit. The planet is dragged through the system in an unpredictable path, beginning another chaotic era. It may freeze in darkness, burn beneath multiple suns, or experience violent gravitational changes that destroy everything on its surface. This is the three-body problem. In classical mechanics, predicting the motion of two gravitational bodies can be manageable. Introduce a third body, however, and and their interactions become extraordinarily sensitive to their starting conditions. Small differences can produce enormous changes over time. There is no single practical formula that can permanently predict the planet's future. Jin explains that the people inside the game aren't failing because they lack intelligence. They're trying to find permanent order in a system that is fundamentally chaotic. The religious authorities don't appreciate the lesson. Jin and Jack are condemned as heretics, but the argument becomes irrelevant when three suns rise in the sky. The world ignites, stone melts. The civilization is erased beneath an expanding ocean of fire. Jin and Jack survive the level because they've correctly identified the structure of the solar system. But knowing why the world is dying isn't the same as knowing how to save it. The next level transports them to the court of Kublai Khan. This civilization has produced its most ambitious attempt yet to defeat chaos. Millions of soldiers stand arranged across the landscape, each holding a banner with two possible sides. Together, the army forms a human computer. Commands pass between formations. Flags flip like binary switches. Isaac Newton and Alan Turing direct the system, using an ocean of human bodies to calculate the movements of the suns. For a moment, the achievement appears magnificent. Humanity often treats greater computing power as the answer to every difficult question. If one mind cannot solve the problem, use 1,000. If 1,000 cannot solve it, use millions. Gather enough information, build a large enough machine, and perhaps uncertainty itself can be conquered. The human computer predicts a stable era lasting thousands of years. The prediction is wrong. The three suns align, gravity becomes distorted, and people begin rising from the ground. Jin and Jack are pulled upward with them, drifting helplessly as the planet's civilization collapses once again. And here Jin finally understands the real test. The players were never expected to solve the three-body problem. The people who created the game already know it cannot be solved with enough reliability to save their planet. The question is what should happen next. If a civilization's home is doomed, survival requires finding another home. Jin says the goal isn't to predict every chaotic era. The goal is to save the people who must live through them. That answer unlocks the final level. While Jin is learning the truth through the game, the other members of the Oxford group are confronting smaller but more personal disasters. Will Downing learns that he has advanced pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis strips away the quiet illusion that he has unlimited time. Will has spent years postponing decisions, postponing ambition, postponing honesty, postponing the moment when he might tell Jin how deeply he loves her. Now the future he assumed would eventually arrive has been replaced by a narrowing number of months. He tries to behave as if the news belongs only to him. His friends can see that something has changed, but Will doesn't want their pity. More painfully, he doesn't want Jin to feel responsible for emotions she has never encouraged. Jin loves him, but not in the way he loves her. That imbalance makes Will one of the most tragic characters in the story. His feelings are sincere, yet he refuses to turn them into a burden. He would rather remain silent than make Jin's happiness more complicated. Saul responds to the growing crisis in the opposite way. He retreats further into temporary pleasures and ironic distance. If physics is broken and scientists are dying, then perhaps commitment is pointless. But Saul's detachment is becoming less convincing. It's easier to pretend nothing matters when the danger remains abstract. The deaths around him are making that performance harder to maintain. Auggie, meanwhile, tries to restart her nanofiber project. The countdown instantly reappears. The message is unmistakable. The threat is connected not to her state of mind, but to the progress of her research. When the project operates, the numbers fall. When she shuts it down, they stop. Someone is monitoring humanity's technological development with impossible precision. Auggie obeys because she believes reaching zero may kill her. But the decision fills her with anger. Her work was supposed to create something meaningful. Now an unseen force has demonstrated that it can control her career, her company, and even what she sees. Thomas Wade views the situation with less emotion. Wade runs the intelligence effort investigating the scientific deaths, and unlike many of the physicists, he doesn't need to understand every mechanism before recognizing the strategic threat. If the enemy is targeting research, then the enemy fears what that research might eventually produce. The broken experiments are not proof that science has failed. They are proof that science matters. Da Shi recovers another virtual reality headset from the home of a dead scientist. The device records its users in extraordinary biological detail. Wade concludes that the game isn't merely educating its players, it's evaluating them. Someone is identifying intelligent, adaptable people and testing how they react to a civilization facing extinction. Players who obsess only over the mathematical puzzle miss the deeper purpose. Players who recognize the need to preserve the population advance. The game is a recruitment system. The organization behind it is looking for human beings willing to sympathize with the civilization of the three suns. That organization already has a powerful leader on Earth. Mike Evans was once a young environmentalist living in rural China, attempting to restore the habitat of an endangered bird. As the heir to an enormous oil fortune, he had the resources to live almost anywhere, yet he isolated himself in a crude shelter and planted trees in a landscape being destroyed by logging. When Ye Wenjie met him, she recognized a familiar disgust with human behavior. Evans believed humanity treated other species as though they had no right to exist. Forests, animals, and ecosystems were valuable only when they served human needs. Ye had watched political ideology justify the destruction of human beings. Evans had watched human superiority justify the destruction of nature. Their grievances were different, but they led toward the same conclusion. Human civilization could not be trusted with power. Ye eventually told Evans about the message from the stars. She revealed that she had contacted an extraterrestrial civilization and invited it to Earth. Instead of recoiling, Evans saw the discovery as confirmation that humanity was not the highest authority in the universe. His fortune gave Ye's belief system what it had previously lacked: infrastructure. Over the following decades, Evans helped build a secret movement devoted to the beings approaching Earth. From a converted oil tanker called Judgment Day, he maintained communication with them and coordinated followers around the world. He called the aliens the Santee, the people of the three-body world. To Evans and his followers, they weren't invaders, they were the Lord. Inside the final level of the game, Jin and Jack stand in a barren landscape while civilizations appear and vanish in the distance. Thousands of years pass in moments. Cities rise, flourish, and are destroyed. No discovery changes the final outcome. The planet will eventually be consumed by one of its suns, torn apart by gravity, or thrown into the darkness of space. Then the Santee receive a message from Earth. For them, Ye Wenjie's invitation is not merely proof of another civilization. It is a map to a habitable world orbiting one stable sun. They construct a fleet and begin the journey. But their ships cannot travel at light speed. Earth is approximately 4 light-years away, and the fleet will require about 400 years to arrive. That delay gives humanity time. It also gives the Santee a problem. Human technological development accelerates. 400 years ago, Earth's societies were radically less advanced than they are now. 400 years in the future, humanity might possess weapons capable of destroying the fleet before it reaches the solar system. The Santee therefore need allies on Earth. When Jin and Jack leave the game, Tatiana explains that they've been selected because they understood the Santee's struggle. The sophisticated headsets, the impossible environments, and the repeated deaths of followers were all designed to create empathy. Jin remains curious. She has seen enough to know the game's creators possess technology beyond anything publicly known. Even if she rejects their mission, she wants answers. Jack sees manipulation. He doesn't care how tragic the Santee's history may be. They are coming to take Earth. A civilization's suffering does not give it the right to conquer another world. He rejects Tatiana's invitation and leaves. That refusal makes him dangerous. Later, Jack returns to his enormous home, surrounded by the products of the successful life he built after leaving physics. Dashi watches the property from outside, expecting that whoever controls the game may contact him again. Tatiana is already inside. Jack tries to defend himself, but he has no chance. She kills him quickly, while the surveillance systems fail to record her presence. Dashi is close enough to prevent the murder, yet the same force that erased Tatiana from Auggie's security footage conceals her again. The Oxford 5 becomes the Oxford 4. Jack's death proves that the recruitment process was never a harmless invitation. Those who accept may become servants. Those who learn the truth and refuse may be eliminated. Jin is now expected at a gathering of successful players. The people behind the game believe she may join them, but Jin is no longer entering alone. Dashi and Wade know about the meeting, and they intend to discover how deeply the Santee's influence has spread through human society. What they don't yet know is that the woman waiting at the center of the gathering is the person who invited the enemy to Earth in the first place. Jin enters the summit carrying two identities. To the people inside the gathering, she is a gifted physicist who has completed the Santee's test and may be ready to join their cause. To Wade and Dashi, she is an informant wearing a transmitter, leading armed officers into the heart of an organization that has already murdered one of her closest friends. The location doesn't resemble the headquarters of a global conspiracy. New recruits drink, talk, and congratulate one another as though they're attending an exclusive scientific conference. That normality is part of what makes the gathering disturbing. These aren't all visibly fanatical people hiding in underground cells. Many are educated professionals who have calmly concluded that an extraterrestrial takeover would be better than continued human rule. Tatiana welcomes Jin personally. She speaks about Jack's death with calculated sympathy, pretending to share Jin's grief while knowing she was the one who killed him. Tatiana's confidence comes from more than loyalty. Until now, the Santee have protected their followers by manipulating cameras, disrupting investigations, and creating illusions. She moves through the human world as though ordinary consequences no longer apply to her. Then the founder of the movement enters. Jin expects a stranger. Instead, she sees Ye Wenjie. For Jin, the revelation is intensely personal. Ye wasn't simply Vera's elderly mother. After Vera's death, she became a link to the mentor Jin had lost. A grieving woman Jin believed she understood. Ye even gave her the virtual reality headset, claiming it had belonged to Vera. Now Jin realizes that every part of that interaction was planned. The headset was never Vera's. Ye selected Jin because she believed Jin might become one of the most important physicists of her generation. The game was placed in her hands to guide her toward this exact room. Ye addresses the gathering and tells the story of how her faith in humanity died. She speaks about watching her father murdered, witnessing people destroy one another in the name of progress, and seeing the natural world treated with the same brutality. But Ye doesn't present the Santee as conquerors. She presents them as teachers. In her version of the future, humanity offers Earth to a civilization that has survived disasters beyond anything humans can imagine. The Santee will bring order, knowledge, and the discipline required to repair what people have broken. It's the most dangerous form of surrender because Ye has transformed it into an act of hope. She isn't asking her followers to think of themselves as traitors. She's asking them to believe they are preparing the world for salvation. Yet, there is a contradiction at the center of Ye's faith. She condemns humanity for believing it has the right to dominate every other form of life, but she has made the largest decision in human history without consulting another human being. Billions of people who were not alive when she sent her message will inherit the consequences of her despair. Ye believes civilization cannot be trusted with its own future, so she chooses that future for everyone. Before the summit can end, Wade's forces raid the building. Gunfire tears through the gathering. Some members surrender, but others defend the organization with total devotion. These people have spent years expecting the Santee to arrive after their own deaths. They know they will never personally witness the new world they're helping create. Their loyalty is therefore not based on reward. It is based on belief. Tatiana tries to shoot Jin during the chaos, proving that recruitment has ended and elimination has begun. Jin survives, but Tatiana escapes once again. Ye does not run. She is taken into custody and brought before Wade's investigators. Even surrounded by the people trying to defeat her lord, she remains strangely calm. The raid has killed many of her followers, yet she interprets her own capture as part of a larger design. The Santee allowed this to happen. That thought protects her from the possibility that her faith may be misplaced. If the enemy succeeds, it proves the Santee are powerful. If the enemy captures her, then the Santee must have permitted it. Every outcome can be absorbed into the belief system. Da Shi challenges her with a simpler question. The Santee will not reach Earth for roughly 400 years. How can Ye possibly know what they will do when they arrive? History is filled with encounters between technologically advanced societies and less advanced populations. Those meetings rarely end well for the weaker side. The Santee need Earth because their planet cannot survive. They aren't traveling across interstellar space to offer advice. They are coming because they require a home. Ye insists that humanity is incapable of solving its own problems. Da Shi doesn't need to defend humanity as innocent or wise. He only needs to recognize that handing the planet to an unknown civilization is not a solution. It is extinction disguised as reform. While Ye is questioned, Mike Evans faces a crisis of his own aboard Judgment Day. For years, Evans has communicated directly with the Santee. Their advanced technology allows them to receive information from Earth without waiting years for ordinary radio signals to cross the distance. To Evans, those conversations have become a form of sacred contact. He reads stories to them and explains human behavior. One story is Little Red Riding Hood. The tale confuses the Santee. The wolf speaks to the girl while pretending to be her grandmother. It knows that the words it says are false. Yet the girl cannot immediately distinguish the lie from the truth. The Santee ask how this is possible. On their world, thought and communication are directly connected. When one Santee communicates with another, what it thinks is exposed. Concealing a plan may be possible through silence, but expressing a statement known to be false is alien to them. Evans tries to explain metaphor, fiction, deception, and the difference between what a human thinks and what a human says. Then he makes a catastrophic mistake. He admits that human beings lie to one another constantly. The Santee begin reinterpreting every conversation they have had with humanity. If humans can knowingly speak falsehoods, then Evans himself may have lied. Ye may have lied. Any promise made by their followers may be meaningless. For the first time, the Santee identify a human quality that frightens them. They stop responding. Evans returns repeatedly to the communication system, begging his lord to speak. The silence exposes how unequal the relationship has always been. Evans imagined himself as a prophet or partner, but the Santee never owed him loyalty. The moment he became strategically unreliable, they abandoned him. The loss of their protection creates an opportunity for Wade. Investigators believe Judgment Day contains recordings of Evans' communications with the Santee. Those files may reveal the invaders' capabilities, intentions, and weaknesses. But the ship is home to a large community, and Evans will destroy the information if he realizes an attack is underway. A missile could obliterate the data. A conventional assault would give the crew time to erase it. Wade needs a method that is sudden, precise, and almost impossible to detect. That method is Augie's nanofiber. The very research the Santee forced her to stop may now provide humanity with its best chance to understand them. Dashi asks Auggie to restart production. As the machinery comes alive, she waits for the countdown to return. It doesn't. The absence is more disturbing than the threat once was. The Santee are no longer protecting their followers aboard Judgment Day. They have decided that Evans and his organization are disposable. Auggie understands what Wade wants to do. By stretching strands of nanofiber across the Panama Canal, they can create an invisible cutting grid. When the ship passes through it, the fibers will slice through steel, equipment, and human beings with the same ease. Wade describes the operation as a way to save the world. Auggie sees mass killing. Both interpretations are true. That moral collision defines the human response to the invasion. The Santee are dangerous, but fighting them may push humanity toward acts that confirm Ye Wenjie's darkest beliefs. The crisis does not separate good people from evil people. It forces frightened people to make decisions whose consequences cannot be made clean. Raj is assigned to help construct the trap. For Jin, he has been a supportive boyfriend with a secretive military career. For Auggie, his willingness to follow the plan reveals something colder. Raj can divide personal morality from operational necessity. Once the mission is approved, he concentrates on executing it correctly. Auggie cannot make that separation. She has spent years building a technology she hoped would improve lives. Now she watches engineers turn it into an invisible blade. The Judgment Day enters the canal. Children play on deck. Families move through corridors. Many of the people aboard may be committed believers, but the operation makes no attempt to distinguish leaders from followers or adults from children. The first nanofibers pass through the hull almost silently. Then the ship begins coming apart. Metal walls separate into sections. Pipes, furniture, and bodies are cut before anyone fully understands what is happening. People run through corridors only to cross fibers too thin to see. The enormous tanker continues moving forward as layer after layer slides apart. Evans realizes the ship is being destroyed and grabs the red storage drive containing the Santee data. He runs, but there is nowhere to escape. The nanofibers reach him too. Judgment Day collapses into a field of sliced metal. The operation succeeds. The drive survives. But Auggie is left staring at the result of her own invention, knowing the world may one day call the mission necessary without ever making it feel less horrific. When Wade's team opens the recovered files, they find years of communication between Evans and the Santee. They also find something else, a massive file with a single name, Sophons. Inside it is the explanation for the impossible countdowns, the failed particle experiments, the erased surveillance footage, and the stars that appeared to blink. Human science was never broken by accident. It was sabotaged by a machine smaller than an atom and intelligent enough to watch the entire world. Wade and Jin enter the Sophons file through the same virtual reality system that recruited the Santee's followers. They find themselves standing in an empty urban landscape beneath an artificial sky. The woman who appears before them has a human face, but she immediately warns Wade not to mistake the form for the species behind it. The Santee do not resemble human beings. The image exists only because the real appearance of the visitors would be difficult for them to process, and, according to the avatar, they probably wouldn't like what they saw. But physical appearance is no longer the most important mystery. The Santee explain that their fleet is already traveling toward Earth. The journey will take 400 years, not because they are primitive, but because interstellar distance remains enormous even for them. Their ships are faster than anything humanity can currently build, yet they are still moving through a universe where the nearest stars are separated by years of travel at the speed of light. At first, that delay sounds like humanity's greatest advantage. 4 centuries is enough time for governments to prepare, industries to change, and generations of scientists to develop new weapons. The Santee understand this better than anyone. Their own progress has been repeatedly interrupted by chaotic eras that wiped out cities, destroyed records, and forced civilization to begin again. Earth doesn't suffer from that problem. Its single sun produces a comparatively stable environment. Knowledge can pass from one generation to the next. Each breakthrough makes later breakthroughs possible. Human progress doesn't move at a constant speed. It accelerates. The Santee compare their development with humanity's and reach a terrifying conclusion. By the time their fleet arrives, the people of Earth may have surpassed them. Their invasion could become a funeral procession, so the Santee have decided to prevent that future before it can exist. They cannot destroy every research facility from 4 light years away. They cannot send an army ahead of the fleet. Instead, they take a single proton and unfold its hidden dimensions. At ordinary scale, a proton is one of the smallest components of matter. But the Santee possess the ability to manipulate dimensions beyond the 3 that humans experience. By unfolding a proton into a lower dimensional structure, they expand it until its surface becomes enormous. Across that surface, they build microscopic circuits. Then they fold the structure back into a proton. The result is a sentient supercomputer contained inside a subatomic particle, a Sophon. The Santee create 4 of them. 2 remain with the fleet. 2 are sent to Earth at nearly the speed of light. Because the pairs are linked through quantum entanglement, information gathered by the Sophons on Earth can be communicated to the Santee almost instantly. This is how the countdown appeared inside Augie's vision. This is how the stars seemed to blink. This is how Tatiana vanished from surveillance recordings. The Sophons can move around the planet with such speed that their actions appear simultaneous. They can enter particle accelerators and interfere with collisions, producing meaningless results. Every experiment designed to probe the deepest structure of matter can be corrupted. Humanity can still build ordinary machines. It can improve engines, computers, aircraft, and conventional weapons. But the foundational science required for the next great technological revolution has been locked away. The Santee describe the strategy with brutal clarity. They are going to kill human science. Wade asks whether the Sophons can read thoughts. They cannot. That limitation matters more than it first appears. The Sophons can see computer screens, overhear conversations, and observe meetings. They can collect almost any information that enters the physical world, but an idea that remains inside a human mind is invisible to them. And now that the Santee understand lying, invisible thoughts terrify them. Humanity may be technologically weaker, but each human being carries a private world behind the face. A person can design a plan while saying something entirely different. Even close allies may not know one another's true intentions. The trait that makes human society dishonest may also become its strongest weapon. For the moment, however, the Santee want humanity to feel powerless. The Sophon avatar unfolds above Wade and Jin, expanding into an impossible structure that surrounds their simulated world. Then the pair are returned to reality, where the message spreads beyond the headset. Electronic displays across the planet change at once. Phones, televisions, advertising screens, and public signs display the same words. "You are bugs." The insult comes from Evan's explanation of human pest control. People consider insects insignificant, yet insects survive every attempt to eliminate them. Now the Santee use the comparison to place humanity beneath them. The sky itself appears to transform. A vast eye opens above the world, visible across cities and continents. Whether the Sophon is physically unfolding around Earth or manipulating how people perceive the sky matters less than the effect. Humanity has been shown a power it cannot explain, delivered by an enemy it cannot reach. The invasion is no longer secret. Panic spreads almost immediately. Religious groups interpret the announcement as judgment. Markets collapse. Riots erupt. Governments impose curfews while crowds gather in streets demanding answers no leader can provide. Some people turn to violence. Others take their own lives rather than continue living beneath a 400-year death sentence. That distance creates a strange psychological crisis. The Santee will not arrive during the lifetime of anyone currently alive. They won't arrive during the lives of their children, grandchildren, or even several generations after that. Yet their existence changes the meaning of every future. Humanity has always known that individuals die. Now it has been given a date for possible extinction. Some people ask why they should sacrifice anything for a battle they will never see. Others ask how anyone can continue ordinary life when the end of civilization is already moving toward Earth. Ye Wenjie finally recognizes the true nature of the force she invited. The Santee are not coming to reform humanity. They intend to destroy it because they believe humans are too dangerous to coexist with. Ye's own actions taught them that lesson. She gave them Earth's location, while Evans taught them that humans can conceal the truth. The civilization Ye imagined as humanity's moral superior has responded to fear exactly as human civilizations often do. It has chosen extermination. Wade refuses to surrender to the scale of the problem. He orders particle accelerators around the world to operate constantly. The experiments may remain corrupted, but every accelerator the Sophons must disrupt demands their attention. Two particles cannot be everywhere at precisely the same instant. If humanity creates enough activity, it may occasionally force an opening. Wade's strategy is crude but psychologically important. He will not allow the enemy's superiority to become an excuse for inactivity. If the Sophons exist, then building them was possible. If the Santee developed faster ships, advanced dimensional engineering, and planet-sized computers, then those achievements are not magic. They are science. And anything science has accomplished once may someday be accomplished again. Wade brings Jin into the planetary defense effort and gives her an assignment that sounds impossible. Humanity needs information about the approaching fleet. A probe must be sent toward the Santee at a meaningful fraction of light speed, using technology already available on Earth. Conventional rockets cannot do it. The fuel required would add more mass, which would require even more fuel. Every solution appears trapped inside the same engineering limit. Then, Jin remembers an old idea involving nuclear pulse propulsion. Instead of carrying all the energy needed for acceleration, the mission could place nuclear devices at intervals along the probe's path. The probe would deploy a radiation sail. As each bomb detonated behind it, the explosion would strike the sail and push the craft faster toward the next device. One explosion becomes one step. A sequence of explosions becomes a staircase extending into space. The project would demand 1,000 nuclear devices positioned with extraordinary precision. It would violate treaties, consume vast resources, and require cooperation between governments that barely trust one another. Wade approves it almost immediately. The fact that the plan is difficult does not make it unacceptable. The only unacceptable plan is no plan. But reducing the mass creates another problem. A probe carrying the machinery required to support a living astronaut would be far too heavy. Wade doesn't need to send a living body. He proposes sending a human brain. The Santee have advanced biotechnology. If they intercept the probe, curiosity may persuade them to reconstruct the person whose brain it carries. That human could then observe the enemy from inside its fleet. It is an intelligence mission built upon speculation, desperation, and a disturbing assumption that a dying person may agree to surrender not only life, but whatever remains after death. While Jin struggles with the moral weight of the idea, Will's condition worsens. He has already stepped away from the career he once imagined. Now, cancer is taking away even the modest future he had accepted. Yet Jack's death leaves Will an unexpected inheritance. His friend had quietly included him in his will, giving Will enough money to spend his final months in comfort. Will uses part of it on something no practical person would buy: a distant star. The money supports planetary defense, but the symbolic ownership is transferred to Jin. Will cannot tell her that he has loved her for years, so he gives her a son she may never know came from him. Then Wade's program begins searching for a terminally ill candidate whose brain can be sent toward the Santee. The candidate must be intelligent, psychologically resilient, and willing to accept a mission from which no recognizable human life may ever return. Without realizing it yet, Jin has helped design a spacecraft meant to carry the mind of the man who loves her into the darkness between the stars. The Staircase project begins with a contradiction. Humanity is trying to send a person farther and faster than any person has ever traveled. Yet almost everything that makes a person physically human must be removed from the mission. Jin's original design requires a chain of 1,000 nuclear explosions. Each detonation would strike the probe's sail and accelerate it toward the next bomb, gradually pushing the craft to a meaningful fraction of light speed. But governments cannot provide 1,000 nuclear devices. The project receives only 300. With less acceleration available, every kilogram becomes a threat to the mission. The probe cannot carry enough fuel to correct large mistakes. It cannot carry a conventional life support system. Even the experimental hibernation chamber, developed to preserve a passenger, would be too heavy. The hibernation technology itself appears promising. A chimpanzee named Kolya is placed into a state between life and death for a month, then successfully revived. Wade sees the test as the beginning of something civilization will eventually need on a much larger scale. If the war will continue for centuries, the people directing it cannot rely entirely on future generations to preserve their plans. Wade imagines entering hibernation, waking periodically to inspect humanity's progress, making whatever decisions are necessary, and returning to sleep. He intends to be alive when the Santee arrive. Jin finds the idea disturbing, but it fits Wade perfectly. He doesn't trust history to carry out his intentions. He trusts himself. The immediate challenge remains the Staircase payload. After the number of nuclear devices is reduced, the craft can carry only around 2 kilograms. That rules out a complete human body. Wade proposes carrying the part that matters most, the brain. His logic is horrifying but not irrational. The Santee are traveling to Earth because they fear and want to understand humanity. If they encounter a probe containing a preserved human brain, curiosity may compel them to retrieve it. Their medical technology may be advanced enough to reconstruct a body, connect the brain to an artificial system, or create some other form of consciousness around it. The mission would not need to reach the Santee's home world. It would only need to cross the fleet's path. If the Santee recover the payload, the person inside may become humanity's first intelligence asset behind enemy lines. Auggie asks the question everyone else is avoiding. Are they planning to kill someone for this? Wade reminds her that the mission was already likely to kill its passenger. Whether the craft carries a whole person or only a brain, the volunteers were never being offered a safe journey. The difference is emotional rather than strategic. Sending an astronaut sounds heroic. Removing the astronaut's brain before launch sounds monstrous. Wade asks the project team to identify someone intelligent enough to understand science, adaptable enough to survive contact with an alien civilization, and willing to accept almost certain death. The ideal candidate would already be dying. Everyone in the room reaches the same conclusion before anyone says his name. Will Downing. Jin and Auggie are horrified. They helped design the mission, but neither imagined Wade would turn their friend into its payload. They tell him they'll speak to Will only to persuade him to refuse. Wade knows that once Will understands what Jin needs, refusal may become unlikely. Meanwhile, Auggie's relationship with the defense project has reached its breaking point. She helped construct the nanofiber sail because Jin believed the Staircase mission could give humanity a future. But Auggie cannot accept Wade's habit of turning every person into a resource. Evans and the passengers aboard Judgment Day became acceptable losses. Now, Will's approaching death has become a convenient engineering solution. Auggie leaves the project and confronts the company that owns her nanofiber research. Her former boss believes the technology belongs to the organization that financed it. He expects her to return, surrender control, and continue producing inventions within the structure he controls. Instead, Auggie uploads the research. The technical specifications, manufacturing information, applications, and scaling work are released across open platforms. The company can no longer contain the discovery or decide who is allowed to use it. Auggie may face prosecution, but the technology now belongs to the world. It is her attempt to reverse what happened in Panama. The fibers were used there as a secret weapon controlled by a small group of powerful people. By releasing the research publicly, she gives doctors, engineers, scientists, and communities everywhere the chance to decide what else it might become. She then leaves Britain. Auggie has seen the richest nations gather their resources to prepare for an invasion 4 centuries away, while people living now still lack clean water. For her, saving humanity can not only mean protecting future governments and military institutions. It must also mean helping the human beings who are already here. At the beach house, Will's world has become much smaller. The Santee, Sophons, nuclear propulsion, and planetary defense exist somewhere beyond the windows. Inside, there is pain, medication, and the knowledge that his body is failing faster than expected. He shows Saul the star he bought for Jin. The star is known as DX3906, and the purchase consumed most of the fortune Jack left him. Saul can hardly understand why anyone would spend so much money on a symbolic gesture that Jin may never connect to Will, but that is exactly why Will chose it. He doesn't want the gift to demand a response. He doesn't want Jin to feel trapped by gratitude or grief. He asks Saul never to reveal where it came from. The star expresses Will's love in the only form he finds emotionally safe, something vast, distant, and impossible to possess. Soon afterward, Will collapses. At the hospital, Jin finally explains the staircase project. She tells him that humanity wants to send a probe toward the alien fleet. She explains the nuclear explosions, the nanofiber sail, the payload restriction, and the possibility that the Santee may reconstruct the person whose brain they recover. The proposal sounds less like science than mythology. A severed mind placed into the sky, waiting for unknown beings to create a new body around it. Jin tells Will that he must reject the offer, but Will recognizes what she is unable to admit. The project has no better candidate. His death is already approaching, and Jin believes the mission might matter. For years, Will has felt as though his potential was wasted. He watched Jin pursue fundamental questions. Auggie transformed theory into technology, Jack built an empire, and Saul remained brilliant even while refusing to use his gifts fully. Will became a teacher and convinced himself that the quieter life was enough. Now, at the end, he has been offered a place in the most ambitious mission in human history. He tells Jin that he loves her. The confession isn't an attempt to change her relationship or claim a reward. It is simply the truth he no longer has time to hide. Jin breaks down because his honesty exposes the cruelty of what she has brought him. She came to persuade him not to volunteer, yet part of her needs him to say yes. Humanity needs a candidate. The project needs his mind. And the person making the request is the woman whose opinion matters most to him. Will gives her permission to want the mission. That may be his greatest act of love. Wade later presents him with a declaration of loyalty to the human race. Anyone sent toward the Santee should promise to protect humanity if given the opportunity. Will refuses to sign it. He has seen enough human behavior to know that loyalty to the species is not automatically virtuous. The Santee may be terrible, but it is also possible that they are better than the people preparing to fight them. Will not swear an oath he does not believe. He would swear loyalty to Jin. He trusts her. Wade considers the refusal and reaches the opposite conclusion from everyone else. Will is not disqualified. He is perfect. If the Santee examine the mission, a devoted human agent may look like an obvious trap, but Will genuinely doubts humanity. He may cooperate with the enemy, That uncertainty makes him believable enough for the Santee to retrieve. He is useful precisely because no one can guarantee whose side he will choose. While Will prepares for death, Ye Wenjie tries to repair the damage caused by her own decision. She admits that Vera discovered the communications between her and Evans. Vera's suicide was not simply caused by experimental results, suggesting physics had become meaningless. She learned that her mother had invited an alien civilization to Earth and helped build the movement responsible for destroying scientific progress. Ye had wanted to save humanity. Instead, she destroyed her daughter. She asks Saul to meet her beside Vera's grave. There she tells him an unusual joke about Einstein dying, taking his violin to heaven, and trying to play music with God. Einstein is warned never to play with God. The joke isn't funny, and Ye knows it. That is the point. The Sophons are listening, but they still struggle with indirect meaning. Ye hides an idea inside a private joke, trusting Saul to recognize that the wording is more important than the punchline. She tells him that some jokes only make sense to two people. It is the last piece of knowledge Ye can offer humanity, a message concealed in metaphor, delivered directly in front of an enemy that sees almost everything but cannot fully understand the human mind. The Santee understand that Ye is no longer loyal. They contact Tatiana again. Ye returns to China and climbs toward the remains of Red Coast Base, the place where she changed the future of the world. Tatiana meets her near the cliff. The former leader and the true believer watch the sunset together. He understands why Tatiana has come. She was already preparing to end her own life. Tatiana promises to give her something more beautiful. For a moment, the two women embrace. Then Ye's life ends where humanity's invitation to the stars began, but her final message remains alive inside Saul. And for reasons he does not yet understand, that makes him one of the most dangerous people on Earth. Will Downing's death is quiet. There is no battlefield, no final scientific breakthrough, and no crowd gathered to celebrate his sacrifice. He lies in a hospital bed while Saul sits beside him, trying to make a few remaining minutes feel ordinary. Will thanks Saul for being his friend. Then the medication enters his body, his breathing slows, and the life he knew comes to an end. What happens next reduces that life to a biological object. Will's brain is removed, preserved at an extremely low temperature, and sealed inside the staircase probe. The procedure may feel brutal, but the mission depends on preventing the tissue from decaying. If the Santee recover it centuries from now, every memory, feeling, and fragment of personality must still be physically encoded inside. Jin refuses to think of the payload as a dead organ. To her, Will remains alive in the only way that matters. His body is gone, but his mind may still have a future. The distinction becomes a source of tension with Raj. He sees the mission through the language of military reality. Will died, his brain was preserved, and the probe is carrying an asset. Jin sees the person. When Raj tells her it isn't Will anymore, she rejects the idea. She doesn't say that she loved him in the past tense. She says she loves him. Will's confession forced Jin to recognize something she had kept safely undefined. He was never simply the kind friend standing at the edge of her life. His presence had become so dependable that she didn't understand its value until the possibility of losing it became irreversible. Now she must watch humanity place what remains of him inside a machine and fire it into space. The staircase launch begins at Cape Canaveral. The probe leaves Earth aboard a conventional rocket. Once it reaches the planned trajectory, it deploys the nanofiber sail Auggie helped create. Ahead of it, 300 nuclear devices have already been positioned across millions of kilometers. The first bomb detonates. Radiation strikes the sail, accelerating the probe toward the second device. The second explosion pushes it faster. For a moment, the impossible plan works. Each detonation is supposed to increase the probe's velocity until Will is traveling at approximately 1% of the speed of light, still far slower than the Santee fleet, but fast enough to cross its projected route. Inside Mission Control, Jin watches a representation of Will climb the nuclear staircase she designed for him. Then the sail connection fails. The probe moves off course. There is no fuel reserve large enough to correct the trajectory. No rescue craft can reach it. No second attempt can recover the payload. Will's brain continues into deep space, but it is no longer traveling toward the Santee fleet. The mission has failed. The loss hits Jin differently from an ordinary engineering disaster. She agreed to let Will become the payload because she believed the sacrifice might give humanity an advantage. Now the mission appears to have converted his final act into nothing. Will is no longer on Earth. He is no longer heading toward the enemy. He is simply falling into space. Yet the failure is not as final as it appears. The universe is large, and the Santee have already demonstrated that they are capable of actions humanity cannot predict. They know about Will. They know the probe's path. More importantly, they wanted to meet him. His story has not necessarily ended. While Jin struggles with the launch, Saul becomes the target of a plan he does not understand. He leaves an apartment after spending the night with a woman he barely knows. As they stand near the road, an autonomous vehicle suddenly accelerates toward him. Saul avoids the impact. The woman does not. The incident initially appears random, another malfunction in a world whose technology is becoming increasingly unreliable. Da Shi knows better. Several vehicles were hacked and their movements were coordinated to kill Saul. The Santee want him dead. That fact makes no sense to Saul. He isn't leading a major scientific program. He hasn't invented a weapon. He hasn't joined Wade's inner circle. Compared with Jin's importance to the Staircase Project or Augie's nanofiber breakthrough, Saul appears strategically irrelevant. But the Santee have been listening since Ye Wenjie spoke to him at Vera's grave. They heard her strange joke. They saw her treat him as the recipient of something important. They may not completely understand what she communicated, but they understand enough to fear it. Da Shi places Saul inside a bulletproof suit and takes him onto a private aircraft. Fighter jets escort the plane. A heavily protected motorcade meets him when they land. No one will explain their destination until Saul arrives at the United Nations headquarters in New York. There, the Planetary Defense Council announces its most unusual strategy. The Sophons can observe almost everything humanity does. They can enter secure facilities, monitor digital communication, watch meetings, and report information to the Santee. Any conventional military plan will be exposed long before it can be implemented. But the Sophons cannot read minds. Human thoughts remain private until a person expresses them through words or actions. The Planetary Defense Council intends to turn that limitation into a weapon. 3 people are appointed as Wallfacers. Each will secretly create a strategy for defeating the Santee. They are not required to explain their decisions. They may request enormous resources, issue seemingly irrational orders, conceal their real goals, and mislead even the people working for them. Every visible action may be part of the plan, or it may be a distraction from the true plan. The first Wallfacer is General Hu Bolin, a Chinese military historian with decades of strategic expertise. The second is Professor Layla Arit, a Kurdish war hero experienced in asymmetrical conflict against a more powerful enemy. The third is Saul Durand. The room reacts with confusion. So does Saul. The other 2 appointments make immediate sense. They are people whose careers have prepared them to think about warfare, power, and survival. Saul has spent much of his adult life avoiding responsibility, but that may be exactly why he was chosen. Wade understands that the Santee attempted to kill Saul after his conversation with Ye. Humanity does not know what Ye told him, and Saul himself may not know either. The enemy's fear is the evidence. Saul is appointed not because humanity understands his value, but because the Santee seem to understand it. The Wallfacer system creates a strange prison around him. Saul rejects the title and refuses its authority. The officials tell him he is free to leave, but the moment he refuses, everyone must consider whether refusal itself is part of his plan. If Saul demands resources, that may be Wallfacer strategy. If he demands nothing, that may also be strategy. If he behaves carelessly, hides, drinks, disappears, or claims he has no plan, no one can know whether he is telling the truth. The role cannot be escaped because every attempt to escape can be interpreted as part of the role. Saul leaves the building and dismisses his protection. A gunshot cracks through the air. The bullet strikes his chest and throws him to the pavement. The protective suit saves his life, though the impact breaks a rib. The assassin is human. That matters because the Sophons cannot directly pull a trigger. The Santee must still depend on people willing to serve them, even after the abandonment of Evan's movement. Their followers may no longer receive comforting messages from the Lord, but some remain prepared to die for the invasion. Saul later demands to meet the shooter. The man regrets failing to aim for Saul's head. He believes killing the Wallfacer would complete his mission and release Saul from a burden he does not yet understand. Saul asks the obvious question: if humanity is nothing but bugs, why are the Santee so afraid of one unmotivated physicist? The assassin cannot answer, but Saul now understands the contradiction. The Santee claim humanity is insignificant while investing extraordinary effort in controlling it. They sabotage science, monitor leaders, build human organizations, threaten researchers, and order assassinations. Powerful beings do not behave this way towards something they truly consider harmless. Wade receives his own warning aboard a private aircraft. Screens activate without permission, displaying the Sophon avatar. She tells him the Santee would have liked to meet Will. Then she speaks about Wade's hibernation plan. If the technology works, they may meet him when the fleet arrives. The Santee have recognized Wade as a long-term threat. That pleases him. Then the avatar appears to stand physically inside the aircraft. The cabin changes around him. Wade sees a mutilated version of himself, and a countdown begins inside his vision. The Santee promise that they will always be with him. Every room he enters, they will already be there. Anything they want him to see, he will see until the day he dies. It is psychological warfare directed at a man who believes fear is merely information. Wade responds by continuing forward. Elsewhere, Auggie is using nanofiber filtration systems to provide clean water to a community in Mexico. While governments prepare for a war hundreds of years away, she chooses to improve lives in the present. Jin and Saul are left in the aftermath of Will's launch. They have lost Jack, Vera, Will, and the ordinary futures they once expected. Da Shi takes them into the countryside and shows them a swarm of cicadas. Humans have tried to exterminate insects throughout history. They have poisoned them, burned their habitats, crushed them, and redesigned entire environments to keep them away. The bugs are still here. That is the answer to the Santee's insult. Being called a bug does not mean humanity has already lost. Bugs survive, they adapt, they emerge after disasters, and continue living in worlds designed to kill them. For the first time since the sky declared war, Jin and Saul look at the future without seeing only defeat. The Santee are coming, the Sophons are watching, science has been restrained, humanity is divided, and the invasion fleet has a 400-year head start on its strategy. But the war has also revealed the Santee's greatest weakness. They cannot understand a mind that keeps its intentions hidden. And somewhere inside Saul Durand is an idea dangerous enough to make an alien civilization afraid. The final image of the cicadas reveals what three-body problem has been doing beneath its alien invasion plot. The series begins by making humanity look powerful. Scientists manipulate matter at microscopic scales. Governments monitor the planet. Intelligence agencies coordinate across borders. Human beings look into the night sky and assume that, even when the universe remains mysterious, it will eventually yield to their instruments. Then the stars blink. From that point forward, almost every major character is forced to confront the same humiliation. Humanity is not at the center of creation. Its science is vulnerable. Its greatest discoveries can be blocked. its private conflicts are visible to an intelligence that has crossed interstellar space. But the series never argues that greater technology automatically means greater wisdom. The Santee possess abilities that appear divine to humanity. They can unfold dimensions, construct computers inside protons, create nearly perfect virtual realities, and observe events across Earth. Yet their civilization is shaped by terror. Their homeworld has taught them that stability can vanish without warning. Every chaotic era may erase generations of work. The sky is not a source of beauty or spiritual comfort. It is an unpredictable machine that can burn, freeze, or tear their planet apart. The Santee's fear of extinction is understandable. Their chosen solution is not. They do not approach humanity with a request for cooperation. They sabotage research, encourage suicide, recruit collaborators, and prepare to eliminate the civilization occupying the planet they need. That makes them a reflection of Ye Wenjie. Ye's suffering explains her decision without excusing it. She watches political fanaticism kill her father. Bai Mulan betrays her. The state imprisons her. The natural world is destroyed around her. Every institution claiming to serve the greater good instead teaches her that individuals become disposable whenever power needs an excuse. When Ye contacts the Santee, she doesn't merely discover extraterrestrial life. She discovers a weapon against humanity. Her reply is an act of despair presented as rational judgment. She assumes the cruelty she has witnessed represents an unchangeable law of human nature. Because people have failed her repeatedly, she concludes that the species has lost the right to determine its future. But Ye's choice contains the same authoritarian logic she despises. She believes that her intelligence and suffering give her the moral authority to decide for billions of strangers. She stops trusting humanity because powerful people treated individuals as objects, then treats the whole human race as an object herself. The series makes this contradiction more painful through Vera. Ye convinces herself that inviting the Santee will create a better world, yet the person destroyed most directly by her secret is her own daughter. Vera discovers that her mother helped produce the crisis consuming modern physics. The intellectual foundation of Vera's life collapses at the same time as her faith in the person who raised her. Ye wanted an external civilization to save humanity from itself. She could not save the person closest to her. Mike Evans reaches the same destination through a different wound. His concern for endangered species begins with compassion. He recognizes that human economic systems often destroy living things that cannot defend themselves, but compassion becomes contempt. Evans stops asking how humanity might change and begins imagining that humanity's disappearance would be a form of justice. That transformation is one of the series' quiet warnings. People can begin with a legitimate moral criticism and end with an ideology that considers other people unworthy of life. Evans believes he is serving a superior civilization. In reality, he is useful only while the Santee trust him. The moment they understand that humans can lie, the relationship ends. His lord never loved him. It needed him. The same imbalance appears in Tatiana. She has surrendered so completely that service becomes her entire identity. Unlike Ye and Evans, Tatiana does not seem interested in philosophical debate. She experiences loyalty as certainty. The Santee give her purpose, and purpose makes violence feel clean. Her devotion survives even after the Santee abandon Evans' organization because belief no longer depends on receiving proof. Tatiana has built a psychological world in which every command confirms her importance and every sacrifice confirms her faith. On the other side of the conflict stands Thomas Wade. Wade does not ask whether humanity deserves to survive. He assumes survival is the objective. That certainty makes him effective, but it also makes him dangerous. He will sacrifice the people aboard Judgment Day, turn Augie's invention into a weapon, and use Will's dying brain as military cargo. He measures morality against the scale of extinction. If billions of future lives may be saved, almost any present action can be justified. Ye and Wade appear to be opposites. Ye loses faith in humanity and invites its replacement. Wade believes so completely in the necessity of human survival that he is willing to damage the humanity he claims to defend. Both characters reduce individuals to parts of a historical equation. Auggie refuses that equation. Her argument is not that the Santee are harmless or that preparation is unnecessary. Her objection is that the future cannot become an excuse for forgetting the people alive now. After Panama, she sees what happens when an invention is separated from the values of its creator. Nanofibers can filter water or cut a ship into pieces. The technology itself has no morality. Meaning comes from the human decisions surrounding it. By releasing her research publicly and using it to provide clean water, Auggie attempts to reclaim those decisions. She cannot control every future use, but she can refuse to let Wade define the invention only as a military asset. Jin occupies the space between Auggie and Wade. She has Auggie's emotional awareness, but she also shares Wade's attraction to impossible solutions. When Jin sees a problem, she needs to solve it. The Santee game recruits her through that instinct. The Staircase Project gives the same instinct a human cost. On paper, the mission is elegant: position nuclear bombs in space, deploy a lightweight sail, and transform a sequence of explosions into acceleration. But the numbers eventually become will. That is the moment when theoretical intelligence collides with personal responsibility. Jin can no longer discuss payload mass without imagining her friend's brain inside the probe. She cannot call the launch a noble sacrifice without remembering that she helped persuade him to accept it. The project fails mechanically, yet it changes Jin permanently. She begins the story searching for answers because truth is valuable in itself. She ends the released season understanding that knowledge creates obligations. Discovering what can be done is only the beginning. Someone must decide what should be done, who will bear the cost, and whether the result still deserves to be called progress. Will's role makes that conflict emotionally devastating. He appears to be the least powerful member of the Oxford group. He isn't directing a major laboratory, building nanotechnology, or advising global defense. Cancer removes even the limited future he expected to have, yet Will is the person chosen to travel farther than any human being. His significance comes not from conquest, but from uncertainty. He refuses to swear loyalty to humanity because he will not pretend the species is innocent. Wade interprets that doubt as strategic value. The Santee may interpret it as an invitation. Will therefore becomes a bridge between civilizations without ever agreeing that either side deserves his obedience. His true loyalty is personal. He trusts Jin. That may appear smaller than loyalty to the human race, but the series repeatedly suggests that abstract devotion becomes dangerous when it loses contact with individual people. Ye sacrifices humanity for an imagined future. Evan sacrifices it for nature. Wade sacrifices individuals for survival. Will chooses one person he knows. Saul is positioned to carry that idea into the larger war. He has spent the season avoiding commitment because commitment creates vulnerability. Intelligence comes easily to him, so he rarely allows it to become responsibility. The Wallfacer appointment destroys that escape. Now every action matters, even when he insists it doesn't. The Santee fear Saul because he received Ye's final hidden idea, but they may also fear what he represents. Saul is not a formal military leader. He is unpredictable, skeptical, and difficult to control. He can speak without revealing his purpose because, for much of the story, he does not fully understand his own purpose. The Wallfacer system turns human inconsistency into strategy. This connects the military plot back to the title. The three-body problem is difficult because the motion of each object changes the motion of the others. Tiny variations in one position can produce enormous differences later. A system that appears predictable can suddenly become chaotic. The same is true of human beings. Ye sends one message, and generations inherit a war. Evans tells one story, and the Santee learn to fear deception. Will buys 1 star, and Jin's understanding of him changes after it is too late. Ye tells Saul one joke, and an alien civilization attempts to kill him. Every person becomes a moving body exerting force on the others. No one can calculate the final result. That is humanity's weakness. It creates betrayal, conflict, and historical disasters. But against an enemy that depends on predictability, it may also be humanity's greatest strength. Adapting 3-body problem for television required solving a problem almost as difficult as the one in its title. Cixin Liu's remembrance of Earth's past trilogy operates across enormous distances and stretches of time. Ideas introduced in one period may not reveal their full importance until generations later. Characters can function as representatives of philosophical positions as much as people moving through a conventional drama. That structure gives the novels their extraordinary scale. It also creates a challenge for television. An audience can follow an explanation about orbital mechanics, dimensional engineering, or nuclear propulsion, but the information becomes more powerful when it changes someone they already care about. The Netflix adaptation's most consequential invention is therefore the Oxford Five. Jin, Saul, Auggie, Will, and Jack are not simply 5 new people added to make the cast larger. Together, they redistribute narrative roles, qualities, and future possibilities associated with multiple figures from the novels. Instead of meeting major protagonists separately across a vast timeline, the audience first knows them as old university friends. That creates emotional connections before the cosmic plot tears them apart. Vera's funeral brings them back together, but the reunion immediately reveals the lives they might have lived in a more ordinary series. Jin might have continued her research while building a future with Raj. Auggie might have introduced a revolutionary material to the world. Saul might eventually have found a purpose worthy of his intelligence. Will might have accepted his quiet life, and Jack might have continued pretending money had resolved every disappointment. The Santee crisis destroys those futures one by one. Jack is murdered. Will becomes a preserved brain sent into space. Jin joins an international defense project. Auggie abandons the institutions surrounding her research. Saul becomes the target of an alien civilization and receives one of the most powerful positions on Earth. Because they begin as friends, every transformation affects the others. The story no longer feels like a collection of brilliant individuals responding independently to the same crisis. It feels like one social system collapsing under outside pressure. That makes the Oxford Five a smaller version of humanity. Each responds to the invasion differently. Jin turns toward the problem. Auggie turns toward the people who may be crushed by the solution. Saul turns away until responsibility becomes impossible to escape. Will accepts sacrifice because death has already limited his alternatives. Jack rejects manipulation immediately and pays with his life. None of these reactions is presented as a complete answer. Together, they form the central question of the series. What does a person owe the future when the future is too distant to imagine? The adaptation also refuses to remove the story from its historical origin. The opening sequence during the Cultural Revolution is essential because Ye Wenjie's message cannot be understood as the decision of a generic disillusioned scientist. Her choice emerges from a specific political catastrophe in which ideology attempts to control scientific truth. The rally where Ye's father is killed establishes the series' argument before the aliens appear. Facts can exist independently of power, but people who defend those facts can still be destroyed by power. Later, the Santee attack humanity by corrupting experimental results. The methods are different, but the purpose is related. During the Cultural Revolution, authorities demand that scientists deny inconvenient truths. In the present, Sophons make it impossible for scientists to identify the truth at all. Ye escapes one assault on knowledge by inviting another. Using both Mandarin and English strengthens the scale of that cause and effect. The story begins in 20th century China expands into contemporary Britain, and then becomes a planetary crisis. No single nation owns the mistake, and no single nation can contain the consequences. The international casting serves the same purpose. The series is not suggesting that humanity will respond to first contact as one culturally uniform group. It presents scientists, soldiers, officials, believers, environmentalists, and ordinary civilians whose loyalties cross national boundaries. The Santee see one species. Humans continue seeing divisions inside it. That contradiction may become one of the greatest obstacles to planetary defense. Cooperation is necessary, but every major project requires governments to share weapons, scientific data, and authority. The aliens do not need to create all human distrust. Much of it already exists. The design of the virtual reality game offers a different kind of adaptation solution. Long scientific explanations become physical experiences. Instead of listening to a lecture about chaotic orbital motion, Jin watches civilizations burn, freeze, and rise into the air. Instead of being told that generations have failed to predict the suns, she walks through the ruins left by those failures. The reflective headset has no visible screen, controls, straps, or recognizable electronics. Its smooth surface makes it look less like a consumer device than an artifact that should not exist. Once it is placed over the head, the boundary between simulated and physical sensation disappears. Players feel heat, cold, pain, food, wind, and death. That realism accomplishes the recruitment mission. The Santee do not want Jin merely to understand their civilization. They want her to mourn it. Follower is crucial to this strategy. A planet can remain an abstraction, even when millions of imaginary people die on it. A child asking to be saved is harder to dismiss. Each time Follower dies and returns, the audience experiences the cruelty of the chaotic eras through a recognizable face. The game converts an astrophysical problem into a moral problem. Can Jin solve the motion of the suns? Eventually, she understands that this is the wrong question. The real question is whether the people can be given somewhere else to live. The visual presentation of the Sophons follows the opposite approach. The game makes an alien world emotionally familiar, while the Sophon demonstration makes familiar reality alien. A proton unfolds into impossible dimensions. The sky becomes a screen. An eye opens over the planet. Electronic systems everywhere display the same insult. The series doesn't reveal the Santee's biological form. Instead, see Shimuka's Sophon. Avatar gives the threat a calm human expression. That decision avoids reducing the enemy to a single monster design. The audience must confront the Santee through their ideas and actions rather than judging them only by appearance. The human face is more unsettling because it is chosen. It is a mask designed for communication. Ramin Djawadi's music supports this unease. The opening theme contains a rhythm that feels like a coded signal but never settles into a comfortably repeated pattern. The uneven pulse suggests that something is attempting to communicate from outside ordinary human structure. As the title sequence moves from small biological and mechanical forms toward the scale of planets and space, the music expands with it. The series constantly moves between those extremes. A proton can alter the future of a planet. A quiet conversation beside a grave can threaten an interstellar civilization. A paper boat can carry more emotional weight than a nuclear explosion. The use of Lana Del Rey's video games around Will's story is especially effective because it separates his sacrifice from the hard language of planetary defense. Wade sees mass, velocity, probability, and intelligence value. The music reminds the audience that Will's decision comes from longing. The staircase launch is scored to feel hopeful even though the engineering remains dangerously fragile. The growing music encourages the audience to believe the probe will complete each stage. When the sail fails, the emotional collapse arrives before the technical explanation. That is how the adaptation handles much of its science. It allows the audience to feel the concept before requiring them to master it. The same technique appears in Ye Wenjie's final joke. On the surface, the Einstein story seems deliberately awkward. God is a violinist Einstein wants to play, and an angel warns him never to play with God. The strange phrasing tells Saul that the conversation contains another layer. Ye knows the Sophons are listening. She cannot hand Saul a written strategy or openly describe the Santee's vulnerability. She must communicate through analogy, reference, and implication. The series plants similar ideas through stories from the beginning. Silent Spring changes Ye's understanding of environmental destruction. Little Red Riding Hood teaches the Santee that humans can lie. Fairy tales appear around Will, Jin, and the Santee's attempts to understand human communication. Einstein's joke hides meaning inside a story that the listener must interpret. Stories are not decorative in three-body problem. They are technologies for placing one mind inside another. That is something the Sophons cannot do directly. They can observe words, but understanding what those words mean to a particular human being requires context, emotion, memory, and imagination. The Santee have mastered the proton. Humanity may survive because it has mastered the metaphor. Season 1 does not end with the Santee fleet appearing above Earth. It ends with humanity realizing that the real battle has already begun. The approaching ships remain 400 years away, but distance does not make the invasion inactive. The Sophons are already shaping scientific research. Human collaborators are still carrying out assassinations. Governments are reorganizing their economies and weapons programs around a war no living leader expects to witness. That creates a crisis unlike almost any conventional conflict. The people making the first decisions will never see the results. They can launch projects, build institutions, and leave instructions, but future generations will inherit the consequences without sharing the experiences that created them. Over 4 centuries, governments will rise and fall, alliances will change. Historical records may be manipulated. Some people may decide the Santee threat was exaggerated. Others may welcome the invasion. Humanity must create a defense strategy capable of surviving humanity itself. Wade's hibernation plan is his answer to that problem. He doesn't intend to entrust the war entirely to descendants who may misunderstand his priorities. By sleeping through long periods and waking at critical moments, Wade hopes to become a continuous line of authority across centuries. The idea makes strategic sense. It also gives one person extraordinary power over generations he cannot fully understand. The Wade who wakes 50 years later may encounter a civilization transformed by technologies, politics, and disasters that do not exist yet. His certainty may preserve the mission, or it may prevent humanity from adapting. That tension is already visible in his relationship with Jin. Wade values Jin because she can turn impossible concepts into workable designs. She sees paths through scientific problems that others accept as closed. But the Staircase Project shows that innovation cannot eliminate uncertainty. The mathematics can be correct. The launch can still fail because one tether disconnects. For Wade, failure produces information. The probe reached unprecedented speed, the sail deployed, and several nuclear stages succeeded. The next attempt can be improved. For Jin, there is no next will. The failed mission therefore separates 2 kinds of thinking. Wade measures progress across the lifespan of a species. Jin experiences it through the life of one person. The future defense effort may need both perspectives, but they will not remain compatible forever. The probe's failure also leaves the season's most emotionally important question unresolved. What has happened to Will? From Earth's perspective, he is drifting away from the planned interception route. His capsule has no practical method of returning, communicating, or correcting its course. Humanity has lost control of him. But the Santee are watching Earth's projects through the Sophons. They knew the Staircase mission existed. They understood what the payload contained, and their message to Wade confirms that they wanted to meet Will. They also possess technology far beyond humanity's current ability. That doesn't guarantee they can recover him. It simply means the project's apparent failure is not the same as the end of Will's journey. Once the capsule left Earth, his fate entered a region of the story where human characters can no longer observe it. Will has become the ultimate message in a bottle. He carries no written promise of loyalty, no weapon, and no complete body. What he carries is a human mind containing love, doubt, resentment, curiosity, and the ability to conceal all of them. If the Santee eventually recover him, they will encounter the exact quality they fear most: a person whose true intentions cannot be known from what he says. Tatiana represents the opposite possibility. At the end of the season, she finds a new headset waiting inside her trailer. The organization that raised her has been shattered. Evans is dead, Ye is dead, and many believers were killed or arrested during the summit raid. Yet Tatiana has not been abandoned. The headset tells her that the Santee still see a purpose for her. Her expression is not one of fear, it is relief. After losing the structures that gave her life meaning, she has been chosen again. That makes her more dangerous than an ordinary operative. Tatiana's loyalty is not based on money or political advantage. She has been conditioned since childhood to believe that service to the Santee gives her existence value. When the headset appears, it confirms that every murder and sacrifice was meaningful. Humanity may dismantle an organization. It cannot arrest an idea. The Santee supporters are also difficult to identify because they do not all share the same motivation. Some believe humanity deserves punishment. Others may expect technological rewards. Some may see the invasion as religious salvation. Future generations could develop entirely new reasons for cooperation. The 400-year delay gives resistance movements as much time to evolve as it gives planetary defense. Saul's role exists because the Santee cannot eliminate that uncertainty. The Wallfacer title gives him enormous authority, but its real power comes from the fact that no one can determine whether he is using it. Saul may ask for a military fleet, a scientific experiment, a private house, or nothing at all. Every request could be genuine, deceptive, or part of a plan whose meaning will become clear only decades later. Even his mistakes may look intentional. That is why refusing the appointment does not free him. Once the world believes Saul might be hiding a strategy, every action becomes evidence of one. The role threatens to erase the difference between Saul the human being and Saul the Wallfacer. Friends may question whether his affection is manipulation. Officials may obey absurd commands because they assume a hidden purpose. Enemies may attack anyone close to him. Absolute secrecy gives Saul power while making real intimacy almost impossible. Ye's final joke is the key to why the Santee fear him, but the season carefully avoids translating the message for the audience. Saul heard the same words the Sophons heard. His advantage is not access to additional information. It is his ability to interpret the information differently. Ye frames the story around Einstein, God, and music. At the simplest level, the warning is about challenging a superior intelligence. But Ye would not risk her final conversation merely to tell Saul that the Santee are powerful. Everyone already knows that. The joke may contain a principle about technology, strategy, or the relationship between civilizations. It may depend upon something Saul knows from physics. It may even be designed to remain meaningless until later experience provides the correct context. The important detail is that the Santee do not need to understand the message completely in order to fear it. Their assassination attempts reveal that uncertainty is unbearable to them. This is the strategic inversion at the center of the ending. Humanity spends most of the season terrified because the Sophons can observe almost everything. But perfect observation is not perfect understanding. The Sophons saw Ye speak with Saul. They heard every word. They still do not know exactly what passed between them. Augie's departure creates another form of uncertainty. By releasing her nanofiber research, she ensures that no single company or government can completely control it. The decision may accelerate valuable applications, but it could also spread dangerous capabilities. The same material that filters contaminated water can become an almost invisible cutting weapon. Auggie accepts that risk because she no longer trusts centralized authority to determine the technology's purpose. Her choice places her in philosophical conflict with Wade, even when both want humanity to survive. Wade believes coordination and secrecy are essential in war. Auggie believes those methods can turn the defense of humanity into the defense of powerful institutions. Jin remains connected to both of them. She may need Wade's resources to continue her work, but Will's loss has made his methods emotionally intolerable. She understands Auggie's rejection, yet she cannot walk away while the greatest scientific challenge in history remains unsolved. Raj adds pressure to that conflict. His relationship with Jin is already breaking under the weight of will and planetary defense. Raj does not lack feeling, but military service has trained him to accept the separation between personal emotion and operational duty. Jin no longer finds that division reassuring. As the crisis expands, Raj is likely to move deeper into humanity's organized defense, while Jin becomes less certain that the people directing it should be trusted without question. And above them all, the Sophons continue watching. They are nearly omnipresent, but not invincible. There are only two active on Earth. They can disrupt particle experiments, alter visual information, and transmit intelligence, yet they cannot physically conquer the planet alone. They depend on fear, confusion, and human collaborators to extend their power. That means every spectacular demonstration has a second purpose. The countdowns, the blinking sky, the giant eye, and the words appearing across every screen are not simply displays of ability. They are theater. The Santee want humanity to imagine that resistance is impossible. Dashi's cicadas expose the weakness in that strategy. Survival does not require believing you are stronger than the thing trying to kill you. It requires continuing after that thing has decided you should be gone. The bugs do not need to understand the entire war. They only need to remain. The ambition of three-body problem is also the source of its greatest weakness. The series wants to tell an intimate story about friendship, grief, and moral responsibility, while simultaneously explaining orbital chaos, quantum communication, dimensional engineering, nuclear propulsion, civilizational collapse, and a war unfolding across 4 centuries. 8 episodes cannot give every idea equal space. At its best, the adaptation solves this problem by attaching science to emotion. The three-body system matters because Follower repeatedly dies beneath its suns. Nanofibers matter because Auggie watches her invention pass through Judgment Day. Nuclear pulse propulsion matters because Will's brain is attached to the sail. The Wallfacer project matters because Saul's private mind has suddenly become a planetary weapon. The series is less successful when information arrives before the characters have time to absorb it. Humanity learns that extraterrestrial beings are coming, that physical research has been sabotaged, and that the night sky can be manipulated. Almost immediately, the story advances toward global defense programs. The speed creates momentum, but it sometimes compresses what should be civilization-changing events. A genuine announcement of intelligent alien life would transform religion, economics, politics, philosophy, and ordinary family life. The series shows panic, riots, collapsing markets, and public despair, yet these reactions pass quickly because the central characters must move to the next strategic problem. That compression is understandable. The real story extends far beyond the released season, and the first 8 episodes must carry the audience from Ye Wenjie's childhood to the formation of the Wallfacer project. But the result occasionally makes the world feel smaller than the ideas threatening it. The Oxford Five create a similar trade-off. Connecting major roles through one group of friends gives the adaptation a powerful emotional center. Jack's death affects people the audience already knows. Will's mission becomes painful because Jin and Saul remember the person inside the payload. Saul's future importance feels connected to the group's shared past, but the concentration of so many historically significant people within one university circle can also feel convenient. One friend invents revolutionary nanofibers. One develops the staircase project. One becomes a Wallfacer. One is selected as humanity's brain envoy. One becomes wealthy enough to fund an act of cosmic generosity. The adaptation gains emotional continuity by sacrificing some of the novel's sense that history is being shaped by strangers separated across nations and eras. Auggie Salazar has become one of the most debated figures because she carries many of the adaptation's moral objections. She resists Wade, suffers after Judgment Day, releases her research, and chooses present-day humanitarian work over distant military preparation. Her position is essential. Without someone challenging Wade, the series might treat every atrocity as automatically justified by the phrase "saving humanity." Yet Auggie's criticism can sometimes appear inconsistent because she condemns the defense organization while continuing to assist when Jin needs her technology. That contradiction is not necessarily failed writing. People experiencing trauma rarely behave according to a perfectly coherent philosophy. Auggie wants to protect her friends. She wants to prevent invasion. She also wants nothing to do with the machinery that turned her invention into a massacre. Those desires cannot all be satisfied at once. Her instability reflects the impossibility of remaining morally untouched during an existential war. Wade has the opposite dramatic advantage. He appears consistent because he has reduced every moral question to the same objective: advance. If one approach fails, gather the results and advance. If one life can produce strategic value, use it and advance. If hibernation allows him to command the war across generations, freeze him and advance. Liam Cunningham's performance makes Wade compelling because the character rarely needs to raise his voice. He speaks about horrifying decisions as though discussing an engineering schedule. The calmness forces other characters and the audience to supply the emotional response he withholds. Rosalind Chow gives Ye Wenjie a different form of control. The older Ye does not behave like someone who considers herself a villain. She carries the stillness of a person who has spent decades explaining her decision to herself. The younger Ye, played by Jin Cheng, shows how that stillness was created. Every betrayal closes another door. Her father's murder destroys faith in institutions. Bai Mulin's cowardice destroys personal trust. Red Coast gives her access to a power beyond humanity. The alien message opens the final door, but Yi chooses to walk through it. The series never asks the audience to forgive that choice. It asks them to understand how an intelligent person can convert pain into ideology. The Judgment Day sequence demonstrates the production's ability to make abstract technology physically disturbing. The horror does not come from explosive spectacle. It comes from delay. The people aboard the ship do not understand what is happening because the cutting surface is invisible. Walls separate. Objects slide apart. A person can cross the fiber before the body recognizes the injury. Parts of the destruction were built and filmed practically before visual effects expanded the scale. That mixture gives the scene weight. Corridors and objects behave like physical structures rather than weightless digital fragments. But the technical success of the sequence should not distract from its moral purpose. The scene is designed to feel wrong. A cleaner action sequence would allow the audience to celebrate the recovery of the Santee files. Instead, the presence of families and children makes victory inseparable from revulsion. Wade receives the information he needs, but Auggie and the viewer must remember how it was obtained. The show's reception reflected the same tension between accessibility and complexity. It reached a large global audience, spent multiple weeks at the top of Netflix's rankings, and appeared in the platform's top 10 across dozens of countries. It also received 6 nominations at the 76th Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Drama Series. That recognition matters because Three-Body Problem refuses to reduce science fiction to background decoration. Its central conflicts depend on ideas. The three suns are not merely an excuse for impressive images. The Sophons are not simply advanced surveillance devices. The Wallfacers are not ordinary secret agents. Each concept changes what power means. The Santee possess extraordinary knowledge but cannot safely predict human intention. Humanity can lie but cannot observe fundamental particles without interference. The Sophons can watch almost any visible action, yet a strange joke between two people may remain beyond their understanding. This balance prevents the conflict from becoming a simple contest between stronger aliens and weaker humans. The real contest is between different forms of intelligence. The Santee solve matter. Humans manipulate meaning. The Santee build a computer inside a proton. Humans hide a strategy inside a story. And that is why the ending feels more hopeful than its circumstances justify. Humanity has not discovered a weapon capable of destroying the fleet. It has discovered that the enemy can be afraid. For a species that has spent the season believing science is dead and resistance is pointless, fear in the enemy is enough to begin again. By the end of its first released chapter, Three-Body Problem has transformed the familiar question of first contact. The important question is not whether humanity is alone, it is whether humanity can survive being known. Before Ye Wenjie sends her message, Earth is hidden inside an almost immeasurable universe. Its wars, discoveries, betrayals, and acts of kindness matter only to the people living here. The moment Ye replies, that privacy ends. Another civilization learns where humanity lives. Then it begins studying what humanity is. The Santee discover a species capable of remarkable progress and irrational destruction. Humans cooperate, compete, love, deceive, sacrifice themselves, and betray one another, sometimes within the same decision. That complexity makes humanity dangerous because it cannot be reduced to a stable equation. And this is why the title reaches beyond orbital physics. Three bodies moving under gravity create a chaotic system because each object constantly changes the path of the others. Human civilization works in much the same way. Ye changes Evans. Evans changes the Santee. The Santee change Wade. Wade changes Jin and Auggie. Will changes Jin. Ye changes Saul. No decision remains isolated. The smallest action can cross decades, continents, and eventually the distance between stars. Ye sends a short reply from Red Coast, and 400 years of human history are redirected. Evans explains a children's story, and an alien civilization learns to fear lies. Will purchases a distant star, and Jin understands his love only when he is no longer beside her. Ye tells an awkward joke near her daughter's grave, and the Santee decides Saul must die. The universe of Three-Body Problem may be governed by physical laws, but history is governed by consequences. That is what makes the series frightening. The Santee do not need to arrive before they begin changing humanity. Their existence has already altered the value of research, the purpose of governments, and the meaning of the future. A child born tomorrow will grow up knowing an invasion fleet is coming. That child may dedicate a life to stopping it. Another may decide the threat is too distant to matter. Another may worship the beings aboard those ships. Another may conclude that cooperation with them is the only path to survival. The war will be fought inside human civilization long before it is fought between planets. Yet the series refuses to end in complete despair. The Santee have Sophons. They can disrupt experiments, watch secure meetings, invade screens, manipulate perception, and deliver messages across interstellar space. Their technology is so advanced that humanity initially experiences it as supernatural power. But the Sophons cannot enter a private mind. They cannot force Saul to understand Ye's joke in a particular way. They cannot determine whether Will's doubt makes him a collaborator or a hidden defender. They cannot know whether a Wallfacer's apparent failure is genuine. The Santee see humanity's dishonesty as a moral defect. The series turns it into strategic uncertainty. That doesn't mean deception becomes heroic. Lies caused many of the disasters that brought humanity to this point. Bai Mulin's betrayal helped shape Ye's hatred. Evan's explanations destroyed the Santee's trust. Secret institutions repeatedly treat human lives as expendable, but the ability to separate thought from speech also protects imagination. A plan can exist before the enemy sees it. A story can contain meaning beyond its literal words. A person can change internally without announcing the moment it happens. Against an observer that wants perfect information, privacy becomes resistance. The cicadas complete that argument. Da Shi does not promise Jin and Saul that humanity will quickly rebuild fundamental physics or invent a weapon stronger than the Santee fleet. He shows them creatures that have survived repeated attempts at extermination. The comparison is humble. Humanity does not need to imagine itself as the ruler of the universe. It may be enough to behave like life itself, persistent, adaptable, and difficult to erase. Bugs survive because they do not require permission from the beings trying to kill them. That is the final emotional turn of the season. Jin begins the story believing that if science fails, reality itself may have lost meaning. She ends understanding that corrupted results are evidence of an enemy's fear. Saul begins by treating responsibility as something he can avoid. He ends as the Wallfacer the Santee are most desperate to eliminate. Will begins believing his life never became important. He ends traveling beyond Earth as the center of a mission neither humanity nor the Santee can ignore. Auggie begins by building a material she believes she controls. She ends recognizing that invention and morality cannot be separated. Ye begins with a justified hatred of cruelty. She ends understanding that despair led her to empower another civilization capable of cruelty on an even larger scale. None of these journeys is finished. Will's probe is lost in space. Tatiana has been summoned again. Wade intends to cross centuries through hibernation. Raj is moving deeper into planetary defense. Jin must continue after sacrificing someone she loved. And Saul possesses a hidden idea he may not yet understand. The released story therefore ends not with resolution, but with a change in scale. What appeared to be a mystery about dying scientists becomes a struggle over the future of intelligent life. What appeared to be a collection of personal tragedies becomes the opening movement of a 4-century war. That unfinished quality is part of the point. No one alive can know whether humanity will survive the fleet's arrival. The people beginning the fight can only contribute one step and trust that someone else will continue climbing. Like the staircase project, the future depends upon one generation passing momentum to the next. Some stages will fail. Some plans will drift off course. Some sacrifices may appear meaningless for centuries before their purpose becomes clear. And the Santee's greatest mistake may be assuming that humanity's chaos makes it weak. Chaos makes humans violent, divided, and dangerously unpredictable. It also makes them capable of producing an answer no enemy can calculate in advance. That is what three-body problem is really about. Not simply aliens invading Earth, but two civilizations trying to understand whether intelligence naturally leads toward cooperation, domination, or fear. One has survived a chaotic universe by demanding control. The other has survived a chaotic history without ever achieving it. The Santee are coming because they believe Earth can be taken. Humanity's first victory is recognizing that belief is not destiny. The scientists may be blocked. The fleet may already be moving. The Sophons may be watching, but the bugs are still here. And if you want more complete series journeys told with the story, character logic, hidden clues, and ending all connected, stay with Series Span Cinema.